Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on the final lap of the sunrise. Now, I'm very, very excited to be here because I do have a lot of interesting content to be talking about in the final lap of this show as well. So make sure you stay tuned because right here on Relax Radio, we have a lot of interesting conversation, especially conversation that's informative, conversation that really makes you think, and conversation that really, really helps you be updated and informed about everything that's happening all around the world, but right here in the United Kingdom as well. So, that's what we do right here on Relax Radio. So make sure you stay tuned because, like I said, I do have a lot of interesting content to talk to you about. But also, before we get into the conversation, I want to quickly remind you that you can actually be a part of the show. All you have to do is just text me on 078 and you can share your thoughts, your opinions, your questions, whatever it is that you want to share with us. You can do that as well. Now, make sure to follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and also to follow us on Facebook because that way you can be a part of the show. You can be updated and informed about everything that we're talking about. And also, you'll be the first to know about everything we're talking about. So make sure you stay tuned. And make sure you follow our socials as well because that way you can in fact be a part of the show. Okay, so let's get into this conversation, which is basically about how men hide their body image issues. Now, last month, from the 14th to the 20th of June, we actually had International Men's Health Week, and we spoke about why men's health is so important, right? Now, another issue that seems to be prevalent these days is, in fact, all these body image issues, rather, that a lot of men are facing. And this is not just, and this is not something that has just started happening. It has, in fact, been happening for a really, really long time. And that's why it's important for us to discuss this, body image issues that men face and ways in which we can help them and ways in which we can, understand some of the societal pressures that they have as well. Okay. So make sure you stay tuned because I know it's going to be an interesting conversation. And I also know that more often than not, when it comes to certain issues that men face, it is not really talked about a lot. And that is, in fact, one of the biggest reasons as to why men never open up and talk about their feelings or their problems because no one really listens to them. No one wants to hear what they're saying, right? And because there's also these narratives and ideas that men are supposed to be strong and not be able to open up and they can't get like vulnerable and stuff like that. So because there are so many narratives that exist like that as well. Obviously, because of those narratives, it makes life really hard, not just for normal people, but also for all the men out there. So make sure you stay tuned because that's what we'll be discussing about. But let's actually get into the conversation right now. Now, over half of all men actually suffer from body insecurities. So, then this brings us to this question. Now, if so many men suffer from body image issues, if so many men have, insecurities about their body, then why is it so hard for us to actually talk about them, right? Why is it so hard for all these men to, come to a conclusion and just talk about the fact that, we all have issues? Why don't we talk about it? Now, let's actually take a very close look into the fashion industry, into media, and into the patriarchy as well, because the patriarchy is also something that contributes to the fact that men can't talk about their emotions. It is, in fact, patriarchy that contributes to the fact that men should always be strong and whatnot, right? So in a way, even though feminism blames patriarchy for all of these thoughts and ideas and whatnot, it not only harms women, it just harms men as well. So we'll be having that conversation because it's important for us to understand that when we're talking about the patriarchy, it not just affects one group of people, but it certainly affects everyone because it has a lot of negative, ridiculous narratives that no one can actually live up to, right? So let's take a look into the fashion industry and the beauty industry and how it has basically given up on most of the normal bodies that we see out there, right? Because Hollywood is very, very happy to depict these average looking, untoned, middle aged guys as unstoppable babe magnets. And it's generally understood that, an actual six pack is basically unattainable nonsense, right? And according to a survey that was actually conducted by that was conducted on the Women's Inequalities Committee last year, 62% of women actually, and 57% of those identifying as neither man nor woman, felt negatively about their body image. And men were hardly far behind because they were at 53%. Okay, now, like I said, when it comes to the fashion and beauty industry, when it comes to the media industry, there's a way in which they portray these men, right? Because look, if you basically look at any movie where, take, okay, my the best example, or the best thing that comes to my mind right now is essentially if you take any love story, you'd have, a really gorgeous, size 8 perfect body woman, and then you'd have an equally, good looking guy with six packs, and that is how, like, that is basically how they fall for each other because they look so good. But the truth is that's not really realistic, because no one, I mean, it's not that no one, but it's just the people who have body types like that are so little, and it's not something that's healthy as well. So the fact that you're always with, the fact that that you have six packs or whatever, and that you constantly need to be at the gym exercising and pretending like you have no other life than going to the gym is in fact very, very detrimental to a lot of men out there. And it's just, we create this very negative ideas, we create these negative stereotypes, we create very, very negative narratives for all these men as well. So in 2019, a survey that was done by the Mental Health Foundation actually suggested that 11% of men who took part had experienced suicidal thoughts as a result of their body image. And something else, that we need to take into consideration or even pay attention to is the fact that men actually have lower levels of life expectancy. They're much more prone to addiction, loneliness, homelessness, and even have higher rates of suicide, right? So, this is where all of this comes in, the fact that men can't talk about their emotions, they can't talk about their problems. They're quite often stigmatized when they do try to open up. And it just really makes you question, society as a whole, because if society is supposed to be all good, all benevolent, all, it's supposed to have so many opportunities, it's supposed to, especially in this day and age, because we're so advanced, it's 2021 like I keep telling you, it's 2021, and we should, everything should be much, much more evolved. We should be more accepting of the fact that different people have different issues, that different people have different problems. But regardless, despite all of that, even though that is the case, we still have these very unhealthy narratives that actually are affecting a lot of people out there, you know and the best part about this is, when it comes to body image issues, when it comes to insecurities about your body, you would generally assume that it would be normal people, like people who aren't celebrities, people who just live normal lives, right? But the truth is, even celebrities have actually opened up and spoken about how some of these standards that are there in the media industry, in the fashion and beauty industry, have affected them negatively, because they feel like they're not enough, they feel like they're not worthy of it as well, right? So, celebrities like Sam Smith and even Robert Pattinson actually have opened up about their struggles with the way they look in recent years. And that just provides more confirmation that body image is in fact a huge problem for men who are even, famous and successful. Right now, what's important is, I think recently Robert Pattinson was named as like the most handsome man on this on earth, right? But even though that's the case, even though you have all these things, it's still very detrimental, because look, in my perspective, this is how I see it. When you have these things, like, oh, the most beautiful woman, or the most beautiful man, or the man with the hottest body, or whatever it is, all these things, it just sets very unrealistic it sets very unrealistic standards, and it makes you sort of compete for beauty, which is not something that should happen in the first place, because beauty is different, right? There's, like I've said this some time back as well, beauty is in diversity. People look beautiful, and they look beautiful in different ways. There's no one set example or one way of looking beautiful. right? And because that's the case, because we've made it into this situation where you can, where only if you're a certain way you are beautiful, because we've made it like that, and we have all these competitions as well that actually reinforce that idea. It actually makes it very, very hard, not just for men but even for some women, to actually open up about the struggle that they're talking, or that they're experiencing, right? Now, research actually shows that men are often caught feeling either too thin or too heavy to meet the male ideal. And, when we're talking about body image issues, we definitely need to talk about, this whole dad bod conversation as well, right? Because, if you don't have six packs, well, then you automatically have a dad bod, and apparently that makes you a bad person. But what I don't understand is that I think a dad bod is much, much more healthier than you constantly going to the gym and trying to, achieve these unrealistic standards of, six packs, and basically, going on this really strict diet of just trying to be all muscular, if I put it that way, right? Which is quite detrimental, which is quite harmful for a lot of people out there as well, right? And it's very important to actually understand why there's so many different pressures out there for men to feel this way, right? And why, and what specifically are they unhappy with, and how can they deal with it, right? Because one thing is quite obvious. Even, just like there are challenges faced by women when it comes to, their bodies, when it comes to the narratives that exist for them, the same applies to men as well. Male body image issues are actually just deeper than weight. It's about the way they look. It's about, whether they're too thin. It's about fitness. It's about so many different things, right? So it's important that we talk about male body image issues as well, because we need to understand that, even though we have all these, we have so many conversations about body image issues and whatnot, we live in a space where it's much easier, or there's a little bit of, ease when it comes to women talking about their body image issues, right? Because they already have that space. I'm not saying it's easy in any way, but in terms of comfort, in terms of acceptance, there is, quite a vast difference when it comes to men and women, because men can barely talk about it, but women can at least talk about it in some, in some way, right? But again, that's another discussion for a whole other day. And that's a whole separate thing altogether. But make sure you stay tuned, because I'll be back after this small break to keep continuing this conversation about, body image issues when it comes to men, and how we can help them deal with it.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? But when you are basically going out and during a day, you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. You buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes, or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods, they're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if that, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value. It may still be doing quite a good thing.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much has changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense. They can't
accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Well, you didn't do very well. And they get upset. And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young, well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, I'd say to me, "You had one to forget." That's it.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it." And that was it. So I'd dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much. A lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise. And like I said, I'm very, very excited to be here on a beautiful Monday morning to keep you company and talk to you about everything that is very, very important. Not just here in the United Kingdom, but also all around the world as well. You're tuned in to Relax Radio, and right here on Relax Radio, we talk about everything, okay? And when I say everything, I mean everything, okay? From science to technology, health, entertainment, business, whatever it is that you name, we talk about all of that, okay? So make sure you stay tuned and make sure you go follow our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because that way you can be a part of our show. You can actually be updated and keep yourself informed about everything that happens right here on Relax Radio as well. So make sure you do that, and make sure you don't forget to download the app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, and you can listen into Relax Radio from your iOS device and your app and your Android device as well. So make sure you do that, and make sure you're part of this conversation any time of the day, because we are we're here any time of the day, every day, okay? So make sure you do do that. And also, just a very, very quick reminder that you can text me on 078 to share your thoughts, your opinions, your messages, whatever it is that you want to share with us. You can do that. So make sure you do that. But right now, let's actually get back to this conversation we were having about the body image issues that men face and why it's so hard for them to actually open up about it. Now, earlier I was just talking about how even celebrities like Sam Smith and Robert Pattinson have had a hard time, accepting their bodies. And recently they opened up and spoke about how they themselves have had body issues. So it just goes to show, regardless of how famous or successful you are, these issues are actually existent for all men around the world, right? It doesn't matter what ethnicity you're from or how rich you are or what kind of job you have, because this is what a lot of men face, right? Now, most celebrities, scientists, and average guys actually agree that there's one major contributing factor that we can credit for the rise of the negative body perception for men and boys, and obviously that is the silver screen. Okay, so stars like Hugh Jackman and Chris Pratt actually pack on muscle to transform into superheroes, to join the likes of people like Dwayne Johnson and Mark Wahlberg, right? And look, how many superhero movies have we seen? Especially if you take the Avengers, they all have these amazing bodies, six packs, and they're so built and they're ripped, and they're basically every at least that's what you'd assume is every girl's dream body for a man, right? Because there's also this like perception that when it comes to women, or when it comes to certain women, they want like men with six packs and whatnot, right? And that's also another reason as to why we sort of portray male bodies in that way as well. So this actually increases the male public interest in obtaining their recipes for these chiseled abs and bulging biceps. Okay, and the thing is, it's not as easy as it looks, honestly. And something else we need to understand is sometimes when it comes to all these abs and whatnot, you can actually make abs. You can make it look like people have abs from makeup itself, like that's literally why makeup exists. And if you've been on YouTube and you've seen all these makeup transformations for the Snow King in uh what's it in Game of Thrones and things like that, when it if you see some of those transformations, you can actually see how good, how you can change so many different things with makeup. So that's the other thing as well, right? When you're constantly portraying these superheroes as people with muscles, as people who are built and they have six packs and they look absolutely amazing and they can woo any lady they want, when you're portraying those men like that, it actually affects a lot of these young men, young boys as well, because they try to have these sort of body types. They try to have these sort of they try to fit into these stereotypes of the bodies. Now it's obviously a very vicious cycle, and we see that it's constantly perpetuated as well, because look how many superhero movies were released in the past few years, right? And obviously when we're all watching these superhero movies, we're definitely going to see bodies like that. So obviously we're still perpetuating that cycle. Now the big screen actually isn't the only place where guys are being exposed to these unrealistic bodies. Right now, a recent GQ feature actually, which was about Instagram's influence on fitness, reported that 43% of people take photos or videos at the gym. Okay, so thanks to the prevalence of Facebook and Instagram, those whose actually combined monthly user count represents over 43% of the global population, are younger, and which is a soon to be largest generation, is in fact exposed to images and videos of others working out every day. And I am not kidding when I say this. I follow so many different accounts on Instagram, and I cannot count the different times that I see people working out. I see people going to the gym, and people who are like ripped and who have abs and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, I am so lazy because I can't even get out of my bed. And I know the problem that, what I feel is probably 10 times worse for men, because, they can't even talk about these issues because they feel very stigmatized and they feel very vulnerable. And because we live in this society where they've been constantly asked to not be vulnerable, to always be strong, and that, that problems aren't really problems and that problems don't matter, because we live in a society that sort of endorses these ideals, and they also, sort of promote them as well. Because it is a place like that, it gets very, very hard for a lot of men out there, right? And but here's the thing though. Now some people, actually some men actually, might find, all this social media fitness content motivational. Sometimes it might even motivate them to actually, work out. But when it comes to, posting pictures and whatnot, there's also a certain degree of intimidation involved, particularly for those who are new to exercise. Because, like I said, you can't just suddenly just decide you're going to work out today and then end up doing like a really intensive workout, because that's not good for you. And that's just common sense, right? You can't just suddenly start with an intensive workout. It has to be something small, and then you need to sort of build your way up, and then, make it more intensive as time passes by. But the thing is, because there's so much of like focus on getting ripped, there's so much of focus on trying to, make your muscles more prominent and to get abs and whatnot. For a lot of people, that is in fact a lot of intimidation, that also leads to a lot of self-doubt and lack of self-confidence as well, right? Because because we have this media, we have media which basically tells us that men should be lean, strong, and muscular. And they're always telling us how men should look, right? But the male body image struggle is actually about is much more than the shape of our bodies, right? It's not just the shape of the bodies, it's about how the bodies are, it's about the intensive workouts behind those kind of bodies, it's about living up to these expectations of how a man's body should look and whatnot, right? So obviously when it comes to these perceptions, it's in fact, or even these narratives, it's in fact very, very harmful. And while I was telling you this, I could not stop thinking of James Bond, because that's the first thing that came into my mind, right? I mean, look, James Bond is a movie that we all love, right? It's about this like guy who comes in and saves the, literally the whole world, and even the country from everything that could possibly be the ruin of our country or even the world, right? But how, like, I was watching one of the James Bond movies recently, and I think Daniel Craig was acting in it, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, his body is like the what you would assume is the perfect body. It has like six packs, and he's always like wearing very see-through stuff, and it just sort of it endorses and it promotes the idea that that's how men's bodies are supposed to look like. And especially when it is something like James Bond, when it is something that focuses, that a lot of people love, right? Because something like James Bond is watched all over the world. It's not just here in the United Kingdom. Everywhere in the world people watch it. They love it. Some people love it, and some people are obsessed with it, right? So when it comes to, portraits like that, when it comes to movies like that, it's very, very important that we also are aware of what we consume, of what we watch, and how that actually affects the way in which we think, right? Now, among other concerns, in addition to the body image issues, men are also figuring out how to deal with problems like hair loss, high perception, and skincare. Okay, when it comes to high perception, how many times have you heard people saying, oh, I want a guy who's like 6 feet tall, or I want a guy who's this tall, or it's just that it's very, very sad. And also, it's scary as well how we place so much of burden on different people. In this instance we're talking about men, but obviously we know that it's this some of these problems that I'm talking about right now, it's not just it doesn't just exist only for men. It exists for women as well. It exists for different types of people. And it's actually quite sad how we want people to look a certain way. Like, why is it that we're never, ever, ever satisfied with the way that people would normally look? And why is it that we try to change things so much, right? And that is obviously a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions involved in that. There's a lot of narratives, systems, structural beliefs, structural beliefs as well, that actually help to endorse and promote those ideals. So make sure you stay tuned, because I'll be back after this small break to actually talk to you about body image issues when it comes to men and everything related to it. But make sure you stay tuned, because I'll be back after this small break.
Now, there's a lot of conversation around who pays more taxes, if it is the rich or if it is the poor, right? When you are basically going out and during a day, you go to a restaurant, you have to pay taxes there. You buy a car, you have to pay taxes there. So why is it even a conversation that, the rich pay less taxes or the poor pay more taxes? Why is it a conversation like that?
Because it's true, the rich generally pay less tax. A rich person walks into a Tesco's or a Sainsbury's, they're not going to get a different bill than another person, right? They're still going to pay the same VAT on those goods, they're still going to pay the same thing. So that's all the same. However, the differences come in if you can pay yourself from your own company, you can structure it in a way that you pay less income tax through paying a bit of salary, paying dividends and so forth, and then also deferring income. Also, your pension payments or contributions can be different. So that increases your tax sort of gap, if that, if you want to use it that way. Where a PAYE person just gets paid salary and bonus. And now those are the most highly taxed sources of income in the UK, definitely, in the UK. We've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? Because in a public company where the stock is traded openly on the stock exchange, the value of that stock is driven by supply and demand, it's driven by emotion, it's driven by news, it's driven by quite a lot of variables over and above the actual accounting or total net worth of that company. I mean, we've seen it, right? If an owner of a large public traded company does something wrong, irrelevant of what that company does or how valuable that company is, the stock generally falls into a pool of nothing, right? And the company may still have value, it may still be doing quite a good thing.
Welcome back to the show. It is your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise, and it's almost the final few minutes of this hour, or the final few minutes of my show. So super excited to be here and talk to you about all these important issues, important things that we talk about, right? So let's actually get back into the conversation, because I do have a lot to tell you about dealing with male body image issues, right? So earlier we were talking about why men find it so hard, and we were talking about what actually what kind of pressures and what kind of narratives that actually make men have these sort of body image issues, and what contributes to them having these sort of body image issues, right? So that's what we were talking about. But right now actually we'll talk about how can men actually deal with these body image issues. But before I quickly get into that conversation, I want to quickly remind you that you can follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can be a part of this conversation, and you can always be updated and informed about everything that we're talking about, everything that we're doing as well. So make sure you go follow us, and also make sure to text me on 078 because I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your opinion as well. So make sure you do that. Now, to get back into this conversation, how can men rather deal with male body image issues? So even knowing the problems, even though we know that this problem exists, body image is in fact quite tough to address, right? Because one of the main challenges is is relatively simple, is that not enough people are talking about the self-image issues that men face, right? And because not many people are talking about it, because not many people actually want to, come to terms with the fact that this is in fact an issue. And not a lot of people are very open and willing to accept the fact that men themselves have issues. Because that's the case, it's very very hard to actually talk about it, right? It's quite hard to, have a conversation and try to normalize the fact that body image issues, men have body image issues, and we need to talk about it to get, to get better, to heal from all of that. But the thing is, because society is not like that, we can't actually get past that, right? Because not a lot of people want to talk about these self-image issues that men face, right? But there are a few things that men themselves can do, and sometimes things that we ourselves can do to help men that we know who are going through these body image issues. So number one thing, and I've seen this even when it comes to female body issues as well, the number one thing to do is you have to accept your body for what it is. And obviously, when it comes to accepting your body, you have to sort of decide, you have to make that decision to be happy with the way you look, with your physique, and not devote your entire life to fixing it, um which is itself, when you do that sort of thing, that in itself is basically an act of rebellion, right? And since our society is so focused on achieving your ideal body, you know because they're so focused on achieving this whole perfect body and whatnot, it's in fact an active rebellion to be happy with your body. And who doesn't love, little acts of rebellion like that? Because I definitely do. And what that does is you yourself, in your mind, like subconsciously, you're telling yourself, look, I don't have to live up to these ridiculous standards of society. I can, be normal. This is how I normally am, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Obviously, that will help you as well. Now, it's also very very helpful to adjust your social media sites to only show content that will inspire positive feelings about your body. Right now, if you're if you're someone who's into fitness, then go follow all the fitness pages you want in the world. It will help you if you are into it. But if you're not into it, if you find all this fitness not necessarily demotivating, but if it makes you feel like you're not enough or you're not doing enough, well, then you have to change that, because you've got to go unfollow all these media, or all these pages on social media that sort of that endorse and promote being fit and whatnot, right? Because the thing is, it's okay to be fit, but if like I said, it's not good for you to do anything too much. Everything that you do should be done in moderation, right? If you're constantly at the gym working out 24/7 hours of the day and not really seeing any results, not seeing any progress, well, then chances are, your whatever program you're doing, whatever workout you're doing isn't working out for you, or you're just or you're just expecting too much of change overnight, because things like that don't happen, especially when it comes to your body. It takes a lot of time to adjust, it takes a lot of time to change things around, and for you to get that body that you want. Okay. And something else that you need to do is you need to talk about it in the real world. So talking about, your male, your body image issues to another friend, regardless of whether it's a male friend or a female friend, it can actually help you ease the pressure to look a specific way. Because chances are, if you probably talk about it with a man who is going through the same issues with you, then they would understand. Like, they would be like, hey dude, same, I'm going through that same thing, and I find it so hard to open up and talk about it as well. Now, you can have all these online groups. There are online groups actually which are about body positivity rather, and those are great. But it's also very valuable to get away from social media and to spend time in places where there are much more realistic images of people, like your local coffee shop or even your restaurant, because you constantly see people there, right? So you constantly know that this is what normal bodies look like. And something else you can do is not being afraid of vulnerability. Being open and honest about body image struggles is not a challenge to your masculinity. And I think this in itself is something that, that needs to be discussed as well, because a lot of people tend to think when they or rather, a lot of men tend to think when they open up about their problems, when they open up about the issues they have, that it challenges their masculinity, which is not the case, because you're allowed to have problems. You're allowed to talk about your problems, because we're human and we all have struggles in our lives, right? So if we can learn to share our experiences, both negative and positive, then we can actually, begin healing, because healing comes from conversation. You have to be able to be vulnerable and talk about the fact that you went through something. And the last thing that you should do, or you need to do, is to remind yourself that the images that are portrayed by media is not actually quite very realistic. It's not realistic at all to begin with, because the media is actually really good at portraying unrealistic bodies and misrepresenting the average physique. And that includes male bodies too. So, obviously, if that's the case, always, always tell yourself when you're watching movies or whatever, just tell yourself, look, this is not, realistically, this is not how male bodies are. So always make sure to remind yourself that, always make sure to tell yourself that this is not how it actually is. Media is good at portraying things, and that is what it has been doing, and that's a reason why male body issues exist as well, right? And I know a lot of these things that I said is much, much more easier said than done, but I think we all need to start somewhere, right? We need to start somewhere small. We need to start telling ourselves, look, it's okay to be different. It's okay to be, not have six packs and whatnot, because, maybe you'll eventually get there, maybe not. But what you need to do is you need to decide and take action to be comfortable in your own skin. Right, so that's what you need to do. And like I said, it's easier said than done. It takes consistent practicing. You need to not give up. You need to keep going. Okay, so that is your motivation for today. Don't give up. Okay, keep going. But it's time for me to actually head out of here and make way for Salah with the social roundup, and she'll be here to talk to you about everything related to society. Okay, so make sure you stay tuned. But I'm actually gonna head out of here now, and I really, really hope you have a good day.